been a while.
It has. It has. I need to sort out
Your angle?
this.
New year, new angle.
Where I'm putting my mic. I don't know what to do with my hands. Like I'm used to like having to keep one kind of placed by the stream deck so I can
Like toggle?
So I can change angles.
But you don't have to do that anymore?
I said to Matt really stupidly, I wish in OBS you could just like split screen it.
And he was like, you can?
He went, you can. I went, no, you can't. He goes, yeah, you can. I was just like,
yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Hi.
Wave at our camera. Still gonna hi.
We're still gonna hi?
We're still gonna hi. I mean, we're in Texas, so we can't like hi too much.
What?
Anyway, in 3, 2. Hi. I'm Hawk.
And I'm Hartlee.
And we're here to talk about authors.
I mean, who write books, so technically.
It has been a while since we have put anything out, and there are reasons for that. Medical reasons.
Medical reasons. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm still alive.
She is still alive.
I didn't die.
I
didn't die.
There were concerns.
I kept my end of the deal. You don't die, I don't die.
So we're back. We all through this process of gaining a kidney.
Just throw it out there.
Yeah, just throw it out there.
You were vague, and then you were just like, oh, well, new kidney.
All through this process of gaining a kidney, we've, kind of had to slow down on our output, but we did thoroughly, and I think you might actually have to just stare.
I might have to just like stare right there and not at you.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
It's okay.
Okay. I see.
It's off-putting.
It's off-putting. Okay.
You'll see what I'm talking about when you edit this.
When I edit this, because we both know that's what's gonna happen. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, in the process of gaining a kidney, we had to slow down. Kind of had to take some stock on doing what was important versus what we wanted to do.
Okay, I am like, I'm Asian enough that I'm a workaholic, and I don't sit still well.
It's okay. I'm not blaming you. But we had to slow down. We were finishing up our project, or still kind of finishing up our project on the book that we're working on writing. And so that took up some time, and getting cut open and have a kidney stuff in took up time, and recovery took up time. And
my kidney's name is Mork.
Mork?
Yeah, I named it because it's an alien in my body.
Does it nanu?
Yes.
Anyway, so we here the last week or so we kind of got together on, hey, let's come up with ideas. What we thought, like, Hartlee was going to have this amazing amount of length of time to be able to read was spent in pain.
Yeah. Someone decided to play comedy specials during recovery.
Sounds like that person knows that laughter is...
It sounds like that person made my life painful for an entire weekend.
I don't know. I'd appreciate a laugh if I just had my guts opened up.
You would, until the laughter part actually happened and jostled everything.
Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so we came up with some ideas to not just do books and plays and actually talk about authors and our favorite authors here and our favorite not favorite tropes here and stuff like that. And so today's video we are going to do a 5 versus 5.
5v5.
I'm gonna say my number 5, and then she's gonna say her number 5, and our viewers will decide who wins that one. And we go to 4, then 3, then 2, and then 1. And our individual numbers will face off against each other. So today's topic is authors.
Authors.
Not just fantasy, not just classics, not just plays, just authors in general.
Except I feel like this is like somebody asking you what your favorite book is.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, do you want to pick a genre? Like, what's my favorite fantasy book? Like,
Yeah.
what's my favorite book right now? Like, I don't.
In my case, I say we go off of what 5 authors mean the most to you as far as how you enjoy reading them, when you found them, like for no particular reason other than they're your top 5.
It's just so limited. 5.
It is. But that's what we're doing. So, number 5. You want to go first or you want me to go first?
Don't care.
I'll go first.
Okay.
My number 5 makes the list, even though I only read a handful, like not even a handful, 2 or 3 of their books. But growing up, very dyslexic and very, very much deficit, I didn't like sitting still long enough to read something, especially when I didn't understand half the word. But I had a teacher in the 6th grade that recognized that I had a kind of appreciation for the outdoors and at just being outside and making my own adventures when I was outside. And she recommended that I read The Hatchet by Gary Paulson, right? Gary Paulson?
Yes, Gary Paulson.
Gary Paulson. And even though it took me...
Was that not required reading? Because we had to read Hatchet. Like,
I can't remember.
I had to read Hatchet in 3rd or 4th grade, I believe.
I remember it very well could have been required reading when I was younger, and I just
didn't actually read it. Because I just remember we had to do these dioramas, and it was like 3rd or 4th grade. But I had to do this diorama, and I remember that I had like a triangle diorama, and it had like the little campfire. Like, it was just, we had to do like a scene.
Yeah.
But that was elementary school.
I mean, it could have been. I was treated very much like I was an idiot when I was in elementary school. So
I mean,
you're
a smart idiot.
Well, I mean, technology and diagnoses of particular learning disabilities came along while we were in school, and thank God for those. And Ritalin. Ritalin worked for me, but I found the books and I read the books, and it took me forever to read them. But the subject matter in The Hatchet just, I always dreamed of being this kid that was thrust into adventure, and how would I cope with it? And here was a story about a kid thrust into this adventure. And then read The Rifle and the follow-up to The Hatchet, The River.
Yeah, see, I never read those.
Yeah.
I only read The Hatchet. I did read, what is it, My Side of the Mountain?
Yeah.
I know that's a different author, but like a similar premise.
Yeah, I read that one too. But Gary Paulson really meant a lot to me early on when I was discovering that stories was something that I actually really, really loved. So that's my number 5.
That's your number 5.
Mm-hmm. Who you got?
See, mine that's like nostalgic, like that is like up higher. But my number 5 is Alexander Dumas.
Oh.
The Three Musketeers, The Count of Monte Cristo, The Man in the Iron Mask.
Can you really say him knowing that he just, hero worshipped his dad into being his protagonists?
Okay, here's the deal. He was just a cool guy, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And, to be such a well-beloved, author in the time that he was coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And
his story's amazing.
Yeah. And he was mixed raced, and
mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just think there's a lot there just in his story that's super cool. But what I like about Alexander Dumas is he has the ability to create these characters that are just so real. They're so dark and gritty, and there's revenge, and yet at the same time they're so relatable and admirable.
Yeah.
When you get past the Three Musketeers and you get into like 20 years later and all of the stuff that you deal with D'Artagnan, it's real. And then that revenge play out for the Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh yeah,
I love that. It's my favorite.
I can't.
Like, if you had me actually do like a top 5 books, like the Count of Monte Cristo is up there, like in my top 5.
Well, we'll keep that one in mind.
But he also did he didn't write the Nutcracker. That was actually written by another guy, but he rewrote the Nutcracker.
Hold on one sec. Just bashed my microphone like a moron. Are you okay, Mikey? Laughing at Mikey?
Nope. I'm laughing at you calling it Mikey.
Anyway.
Anyway, he didn't write the Nutcracker, but he rewrote the Nutcracker, and the version that he wrote is the one that got used for the ballet.
Ah.
And then he also wrote this fantasy novel called The Wolf Leader, which is like one of the top, or the first, I don't know, not the first, but like one of the first werewolf books.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually kind of horribly great. A little brash and over dramatic, but fun.
Yeah.
All the same. I don't know. I enjoy his writing. I enjoy the way that he crafts characters. And I enjoy the historical aspects the bent that he puts in.
Gotcha.
So he's my number 5.
All right. Well, Alexander Dumas versus Gary Paulson. On to number 4. You go first this time.
Okay, my number 4 is actually a romance author.
Okay.
And it's Sherilyn Keenan, and she does the Dark Hunter series. It's just this beautiful mix of mythologies. The way that American Gods mix together mythologies, but with romance. And she does have, it's a big series, and there's a lot of different characters, and the fact that she manages to make each one of her male and female protagonists unique when she has such a prolific catalog of books, I think is just impressive. I've read almost all of them. I would say that Acheron and Styx are just absolute masterworks that don't get the credit that they deserve because they're categorized as romance novels. But she actually has a doctorate or something in ancient civilizations or something. I would have to look it up again. I just know she has a really high degree in that stuff. So all of it's fairly accurate when, these characters are old, they're not old looking. Yeah. They come from these different times of legends, And so when you get into Sparta and you get into the Romans and it's all very accurate, really.
Okay.
But she mixes vampires and Greek mythology together, and who doesn't love that? And romance. I'm a fan. And I would say she's one of my she's my favorite if we're going romance novels.
Okay.
I got some honorable mentions in that category, but
we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
My turn?
Yep.
my, ugh, it almost hurts me putting this one down as low as I have. But my number 4 is The Professor, John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. I remember, because Lord of the Rings came out when we were in high school, right?
Yeah, the movies.
And the movies. And I told Mom, like, hey, like, these are based on books. I want to read the books. And then got like 2 chapters in, like, well, this is ridiculous.
That was a lot, yeah.
And then I stopped reading them. And then it wasn't until my senior year, right after senior year, when I got back into reading with all the Star Wars books that I was reading, that I decided to tackle Rings again. And was in a place where I could actually appreciate what J.R.R. Tolkien had done, the world that he created.
Yeah.
And you just, my favorite genre is fantasy. That's no secret.
Yeah.
It's definitely not going to be a secret when you hear the rest of this list.
I could probably guess your next 3.
You probably could guess my next 3. And there are, the genre doesn't exist today like it exists today without Professor Tolkien. It just doesn't.
Oh, absolutely. And I have that argument with my brother, like, because he's like, oh, Tolkien's overrated. And I'm like, no, sir. Tolkien is the father of modern fantasy. So the fact that you like things like Sandman, means you like Tolkien.
And even authors that I've listened to in like a seminar or a master class or something like that may not be a complete Tolkien head, has studied how he did what he did, why he did what he did. And so he's the bar, really.
Yeah.
He's the bar.
Well, even I would say that, like, I list him among my influences. I mean, you can go look at well, you can't right now because it's not published, but like, you can go look at the, some of the prophecy poetry stuff that's written in our book, and some of it is pretty heavily influenced by Tolkien.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I'm the guy that wants to write a book that has full-on song breaks in it. Tolkien.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm here for it.
So that's my number 4. Tolkien versus...
Oh, Sherilyn Keenan. Yeah, Tolkien would slap that one down. I don't even have Tolkien on my list to be...
I reread Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit once a year. It's just part of my once a year list of books that I go through, like Harry Potter and Wheel of Time. And
I think I read The Hobbit when I was like in 5th grade.
Yeah.
I think I read The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion in like middle school, high school. And then I did like an extensive like graduate level class on Tolkien and The Hobbit the year that the Hobbit movie came out when I was in college. So
all right. Well, number 3, you ready?
Yeah.
My number 3 is, I'm gonna be real honest, my top 3 was really difficult for me.
Like the order to put them in?
The order to put them in.
I was like, the top 3 I would have thought would have just been like, fairly standard. Like, it's just the order that you probably...
Well, I appreciate these authors for completely different reasons, but my number 3 is Brandon Sanderson.
Brandon Sanderson
is my number 3. I had gotten into his books because of Wheel of Time, and I'm not gonna lie, about halfway through book 14, I was like, you know what? If this goes how I think it's gonna go, I'm never reading another Brandon Sanderson book ever again.
Because you're mad at him.
I was so mad. Anyway, here we are. Obviously, he didn't do too terrible of a job because he's my number 3 favorite author of all time at the moment. Everybody knows that reads fantasy knows that his kind of thing is magic systems.
Right, and he's excellent at them.
Yeah, the thing that he does exceptionally well that I think goes very underappreciated is his attention to detail and crafting truly flawed protagonists and antagonists. Characters have real problems, have real struggles. They're not just motivated by the story. There's real stuff happening in it. And he goes through the process and the pain to talk to people that have, post-traumatic stress or schizophrenia or, on some spot of the autism spectrum. To represent a character in a true way, but also not ever put a character in a position where he's making fun.
Right.
And there's just something about these characters that get so drawn up and, one, screaming at them, yelling at them, and raging and crying. And if you would only, and please, like, it's like you're talking to one of your best friends. Would you please quit, leave that person, stop letting them do that to you. Like you're having characters with, or conversations with characters that you have with your best friend, or drinking buddy or a coworker. You get to know these characters on that deep of an emotional level, and that is, I think, in modern fantasy, definitely, and modern writing period, I don't know that I've read his equal yet when it comes to characters.
Well, what's impressive is he's able to do that while still being such a prolific writer.
Oh my God. He writes so much.
And not, again, this goes back to my argument for Sherilyn Keenan, being able to create as many characters as they create while still making them so tangible and so unique, and they don't get kind of lost in that, plethora. I think that says something, to be able to have a character as unique as a human.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's my number 3. Who do you got?
Okay, my number 3 is William Goldman, because The Princess Bride. Because, and honestly, you're gonna probably see this a lot in my top 3, is that kind of snarky, wit, that unreliable, interrupting narrator style. Mm-hmm. I got first from William Goldman, and that book, and I know you haven't read the book, you've just seen the movie, but he interrupts a lot the narrative, so you're reading through, and the way he's telling the story is very much skewed by his own reflections on the story. He always has these little side comments, and I know when I started writing, my style was very much that. I can hear my professor's voice saying, "You're not as funny as you think you are," but it was that kind of side note humor.
Yeah.
So I would say it's my favorite movie, and the book is in my top 5, and I think it had a pretty heavy influence on the way that I write.
Gotcha. Well, number 3, Brandon Sanderson versus William Goldman.
Goldman. Mm-hmm.
You decide. All right, give me your number 2.
My number 2. Okay, so my number 2, and I struggled really actually a lot between my 1 and my 2 and which one I wanted to put first, and I was having, and ultimately I had to just go with the actual author and the craft and not my romantic feelings about it.
Okay.
But my number 2 is Robin McKinley.
Okay.
She wrote my favorite adaptation of Beauty and the Beast. She also wrote The Blue Sword and The Hero and the Crown, which was the first fantasy book that I ever read that had a strong female protagonist. And that meant something in middle school when the Harry Potter books were coming out,
Yeah.
you know. And I love Harry Potter, and
Mhm.
J.K. Rowling is a phenomenal writer. And I watched all of the guys around me just become readers because of that. But I was already a reader, and I was already reading fantasy, and I was already reading classic literature, even in middle school. You know, I bit off more than I could chew, but I read The Tale of Two Cities, you know, in 7th grade, the full version. But this was the first time that I saw, you know, a female protagonist, a heroine that was taking an active role in determining the course of her own story. You know, she wasn't being rescued. She wasn't helping a guy rescue her. Like, it was very much she was the hero, you know, and at the same time, she had the same heroic ideals that all of the male protagonists I was seeing in fantasy had. You know, that duty and honor and sacrifice and, you know, faithfulness. And it's, I don't know, it was special for me as a little girl growing up. So, and again, she wrote my favorite adaptation of Beauty and the Beast. I adore it. I've read it probably, not exaggerating, 200 times.
Okay.
So she's definitely up there.
All right. Well, my number 2 would be, and it's not because of all the stuff he's put out.
Oh, finish the 3rd book, please.
I'm joking. You do the best you can. My number 2 is Patrick Rothfuss.
Yeah.
When I got back into fantasy, there was a kind of clear roadmap my mom had drawn out that I was going to walk down, whether I wanted to or not. And making the first 2 happen was relatively easy once I started, you know, the first series. But she kept on talking about this guy, Patrick Rothfuss, and how much she loved his writing and how much she loved his story, how much she thought that I would love his story. So I eventually was like, you know what, that's when I was on the road all the time.
I think we had started writing already when you read that.
It's possible.
Because I remember her pushing you to read it, and you were like, oh, when I have time.
Yeah.
You know.
And like I said, I was still on the road, and I listen to audiobooks all the time because you got nothing else to do. And when I started the King Killer Chronicle, I started Wise Man's Fear first.
The Name of the Wind.
Name of the Wind.
Mm-hmm. Name of the Wind.
I always get those 2 backwards. When I started Name of the Wind, it was just I was hooked. Whoop! I mean, just grabbed up and yanked along. And as soon as I finished it, I'd already downloaded the second one so I could just keep burning through it. And it's become one of those read every year a couple times because that's all I got.
Is those 2?
Well, and the Slow Regard of Silent Things, which is a novella where the protagonist is one of the secondary characters, and it's just a lovely little piece of writing. But I have yet to be in such a short sample size, in such a short period of time, just fully involved in a story. And I think it's because so much of this story is about storytelling. It's not just you're getting a story about a dude, you're getting a story told by a dude about himself who's got references to other stories, these stories, and that stories. Like it's all my favorite things told by a dude that's telling a dude that's telling by a dude that's got another dude writing it down. It sounds really convoluted because it is, but it's so easy to just lose yourself in it. So, while I eagerly await the 3rd book and then eagerly await everything else to come after it, he says he's going to write more in that world, maybe not so much about the characters that are there already, but there's something about his style. No word seems like it's there on accident. No character seems like they speak for no reason. No action seems to happen for that's meaningless, and and just the sheer scope of these stories with that kind of intensity going all the way through is just mind-boggling. So we say it about every great story. I still read Harry Potter once a year, and I'll catch something,
Yeah.
but I'll catch something in 7 books. In the King Killer Chronicle books, I'll catch 7 things in 1 chapter, and go, what, where's that been this whole time? That completely changes the way I think about this.
I'm honestly, like, as much as you've like rage fitted over this 3rd book, like I'm waiting for the 3rd book to come out before I even start the 1st one. Like I can't.
So those are our number 2s.
Those are our number 2s.
Patrick Rothfuss and Robin McKinley.
Hmm?
So
I mean, both fantasy authors.
Yeah. So we both have honorable mentions. I have 4.
You
have 4? All right. You do one, I do one, you do one, I do one, you do one, I do one, you do one, I one, and we won't talk about it until afterwards.
Okay.
All
right.
Go.
The Bard.
William Shakespeare.
Okay.
J.K. Rowling.
Brandon Sanderson.
Okay. R.F. Kuang.
Lexi Blake. She's a romance author.
Okay. S.E. Hinton. Some of that.
Yeah.
Throwback again.
Yeah. And J.K. Rowling.
Jane Austen.
Oh. Breaking my heart. Putting my girl down in the honorable mentions.
Hey, she's in the honorable mentions and not being mentioned at all.
That's true. I put Brandon Sanderson down there.
I love Jane Austen. You know this. But you also know that my sample size of Jane Austen is still rather small.
I know. I have some more on the list for you to read.
But so more of that is coming. We've talked about Jane Austen.
Yeah.
You've thrown things at me, Jane Austen.
That's true.
All right. I am going to let you give your number 1 first, since it's no surprise who mine is between the 2 of us and about 3 of our viewers.
I mean, it's no surprise who mine is either. I bet you could guess it.
I'm waiting.
It is Jane Austen. Jane Austen is my number 1.
I figured we'd just go ahead and
just segue right into that.
Just go right to it.
All right. Yeah, because just the social satire, like the commentary, the wit, the snark, the absolute craftsmanship, the characterization. Like I can't say enough about Jane Austen.
Yeah, she's great.
I think that of everyone that I've read, she probably has the absolute strongest influence on my writing. I think anybody who reads our book will be able to see that quite clearly.
She definitely influences one character for me.
Yeah. I mean, some conversations. I'm not saying that it's not still like modern fantasy. Like you're not going to be reading just slews of old, proper English phrasing, but it's there. You can tell in the snark, in the wit. Again, yes, for one particular character. And she wrote my absolute favorite book of all time. So I have to give her, since her book takes the top slot for me, she as an author takes the top slot for me.
All right. Well, it's not a bad pick.
It is an excellent pick, and you're going to be hard pressed to move me because I know what your favorite is.
I'm not here to move you. I'm here to move the people that I'm talking to.
Fair.
All right. So, my number 1 is the venerable Robert Jordan. And again, I struggled, to be honest with myself, with this list, because one, my top 5 is a bunch of dudes. But again, if I was being honest with myself, these 5 authors are the guys the writers that have affected me the most.
Yeah.
Jordan came into my life in a really weird time. Mom had been trying to get me to read it for years and years, since high school.
Yeah.
And I got to a point to where I had just changed jobs. I had just moved into a little apartment by myself. I wasn't making music anymore, wasn't playing anymore. So I was spending most of my time at home alone watching anime or Marvel movies. And I decided to give Eye of the World a shot. And 2 weeks later, I came up for air.
Sounds like you resurfaced from the depths where you disappeared.
Yeah, after Memory of Light, and felt a real loss. So one, I found the story in a spot where I was in a bad spot. I was in a slump, going through a depression, whatever you want to call it. It's probably accurate. And that story put the idea in my head that I could maybe write something. That maybe I could try to craft a story. And then, not too long after that, I came over to y'all's house and you were like, hey, we need to write a story or something. Like whether it's music or a novel. I was like, yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
And
because there are consequences.
Yeah.
For when I open my mouth and say words.
3 years later.
Yeah.
So we are. And another thing, when I say I felt like I lost something, that story ended, and I really did not know what to do with myself for about a week. I was in just complete shell shock. Just spent these 2 weeks, hard 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Where I was driving, I was on the road, and I was literally every spare moment I had quiet in that truck, those books were going. The tones of Michael Kramer and Kate Redding are forever etched in my memory because of these books. I fell in love. I yelled. I raged. I cried. I laughed. I screamed out in victory. I railed in defeat. Like I went through everything with this story. And being that I've never had just that visceral of a reaction to a group of stories and a group of people, how can he not take my top spot? How can he not? Yeah. And so, while I will concede to the literary world, Jane Austen's probably a little bit more influential. In my world, Robert Jordan is king. And maybe one day Sanderson or, Rothfuss or somebody else who I'm planning on reading that haven't discovered yet, because there's a bunch.
Yeah.
We'll knock him off the throne. But for the meantime, it's Wheel of Time, Robert Jordan. Obviously this channel got started talking about
I was just like, it's quite obvious that the influence that it's had on our business endeavors. Mm-hmm. I'm still working my way through.
So, for a quick recap, let's just my 5 year 5, 4 all the way down to 1.
Okay.
All right. Gary Paulson,
Alexander Dumas,
J.R.R. Tolkien. There's my finger. J.R.R. Tolkien.
Sherilyn Keenan.
Brandon Sanderson.
William Goldman.
Patrick Rothfuss.
Robin McKinley.
Robert Jordan.
Jane Austen.
Hey, I'm not mad about this at all. That's a good group. So, we have more 5-on-5s and other videos coming out. I'm working on the second book to that Rebel in the Sands something or other. You're working on Wheel of Time, obviously.
Yeah. I'm on Lord of Chaos.
Oh, that's a good one. So we are we are reading. We are getting back into the swing of things.
Yeah.
We are going to be back on a more permanent basis. And until we see you guys again, keep reading. That's a good. That'd be like put all those brains in one person and make them
like
write a
who would you
story.
invite to dinner, dead or alive,
Oh,
kind of
man.
thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd go to that party.
I would
I'd
definitely
get
go to that party.
Wasted at that party. I'd break open my brand new bottle of Glenlivet. Just get dirty.
That was a good bottle.
Mm-hmm.
I want like 6 more of that bottle.
Thanks, Mom. Where'd you get it?
Thanks, Mom.